All right, everyone, welcome. It is Tuesday. If you're in the US, it's election day, so it's okay. We're recording this, so it's good. But welcome to the MSP Initiative. We bring back Adam Slutskin from Liongard. And obviously, Adam's actually been through many walks of life in MSP land, but currently with Liongard. How are you doing today, Adam?
Hey, Mr. Bardizzi, how are you?
Oh, it's not too cold outside, and that's a win in my book. The Eagles won on Sunday night for whatever that's worth. So, I'm ahead this week.
There you go.
So last time we talked to you, I just went back and checked. It was March, and man, feel like this year was 3 years worth of sitting at home and watching the clock spin. So, I'd love to get, just a general, idea on how things are now, right? I mean, we're past hopefully the thick of things, and MSPs out there are still having to figure out their sales process and how to get people through their pipelines and grow. You are a sales guru, right? You help people figure out their path through that. So I love to get an idea from you on what you're hearing out there now that it's November, right? We're about to close out the year, and what's different now, right? How's that process look now versus March?
Well, wow. It's amazing how many things have changed this year. It's, been a year like none others for, I think, the majority of us. I know that until the next thing happens. I remember feeling the same way for those of you in, New York or DC or that whole area after 9/11. We thought the world would never get back to normal. And the good thing is it did. And I think that's where we're heading this year. It seems like a year like no other years, but, life has a good way of moving on, and business as well. But when you think about what's changed, I just had a great call with a bunch of MSPs that are spread out geographically, have a different focus area as far as business practice. And it was really interesting, George. A lot of us, the MSP, right? They're MSPs, and you think sometimes, different cadence. And of course, me being on the vendor side, but man, it was amazing how we all followed the same trajectory. Q1 started off okay and declined rather than inclined in growth like we would normally see. Then we all were very worried. And then Q2 for many had this resurgence. And then here comes Q3, where the first 2 months of Q3 had a pretty good dip. And then September was pretty good. And then October, from talking to a lot of the MSPs, was pretty good. Now, if you didn't feel like you had that same trajectory and you're watching this, I'm only sharing with you what a lot of MSPs that I talk to that we really had that in common. I think we all have adjusted to having to take care of our customers differently, make some adjustments there. I think we all lost a few along the way. This was a tough year, but then I've seen resiliency and the way everybody's kind of adapted to using Zoom or being virtual, trying different techniques to grow the revenue. And honestly, very similar from the vendors I talked to and the MSPs I talked to. It was really, it was good, George. It was challenging. It's been challenging. We're not out of the woods yet. God willing, we, will continue to trend in the right direction. Like I think we are, and start to look to better things, as we get into 2021.
So now that you've had the opportunity, you work remote already, right?
Yeah.
But the majority of your current team is also remote. Now that you've been through it, does it work better, worse, the same? What's your feeling?
So I think it's going to be different for different companies and for different roles. I will say this, my company that I just love being part of, Liongard, it's coming up on 2.5 years with them. We were mostly headquartered in Houston, and then about 10 or 15% of us here in Tampa that all had that shared background from Connectwise. And so those in Tampa were virtual. We've been virtual from the beginning, but the entire company, we pivoted right away at the end of February. we made a pretty early decision, end of February, first week of March, and we've been virtual since. And, you know, I humbly say this, and thanks to the community that have supported us, we've had, you know, very significant growth over last year. So I think in particular for revenue and sales, you know, look, we live by numbers and activity, and because commission drives behavior, we're motivated to get it done. You know, whether we're on top of a mountain, in a bunker, you know, it really doesn't matter, man. Working from home. I'd say the biggest challenges, and like to hear your opinion, you know, I think it's really the training. Training's done in a more unique way because you're doing it virtual and making sure that everybody's paying attention. I'll throw it out there. One thing we did to, you know, help validate that people were paying attention is, you know, we test on the material. And not to punish or because we have nothing better to do. We want to make sure people are getting the, you know, the essence of the material that we're sharing. And so one thing we did, and we incent on it as well, have a little contest behind it, but we test. Anything that you've done or that you tried that you think's worked?
I've always been old school, right? Kind of like apprentice style, right? The more that you're in it, the more that you learn. It's just osmosis, right? I know everybody's different learning styles, right? Some people are more, I need to read it. Some people are, I need to see it. And then some people are, I need to touch it, need to be in front of it. So I've always been if I see it, I remember it. If you force me to read the book, I'll read it, but it's not the same for me personally. So, and maybe it's just the find the best path guy, right? I don't know if you know this. There's 3 states in these here United States of America where you can be a lawyer without going to law school and still take the bar exam and be a lawyer, right? You can be an apprentice. So I like having people being on as many calls as possible and kind of working on it together, right? Now, of course, that takes a while, and that may not be the fastest route, but I'll tell you what, you know, if you're in a conversation and you're actually paying attention, you tend to remember things, right? And when that comes back up again, it's like, you know, filed away. So, you know,
Yeah.
I like to take that approach. You know, it's interesting. I mean, listen, the testing approach is very interesting, especially for people who haven't been in the classroom for a while. But hey, you know, like different tricks to get people to attach to information.
You don't have to write the book. Like, you know, we don't do 50 question tests. You know, it's like, you know, probably a test is maybe, you know, more like a quiz. And guess what? If you don't get it wrong, you know, you go until you get it right, and you'll watch the recorded, you know, presentation. But listen, there's a lot of different things, you know, that's one way. You know, if anybody has, that's out there, any unique things they're doing, you know, share it with us so that we can share it with everybody watching. If not this time, next time, send it in. But I think the big thing is people throw up their hands and scream, the sky is falling. They probably didn't do too good, and they probably wasted some time. And I think, listen, man, I love this community. I can't say it enough. We're a community of entrepreneurs. And what does that mean? When you have that entrepreneurial spirit, we're used to making adjustments. And I think the majority of the ecosystem is good at making adjustments. For those that didn't, at least right away, it took them a little while longer. But I think making those adjustments, if, for example, if you're someone that said, well, I'm never going to consider, you know, giving kind of any promotional, you know, ramps or deferred payment, you might have lost some customers. But those that did, I think you've really built some brand loyalty. I know we did. You know, we wanted to be there for some that were having some unique challenges. And you know what? The majority of them came through. We were able to do some deferments, and then they were very appreciative. And you know, and they're back paying customers. And I think, you know, you really gain that little bit of trust and credibility when you can bend a little bit, you know.
I mean, it's definitely interesting, right? And we've had a bunch of conversations with a bunch of people about a lot of people kind of trying to figure out how to get their existing customers through. I think after everyone figured that out and figured out who was going to make it after all that, you know, the funding programs disappeared and were exhausted, right? PPP, idle, whatever. then it was back to, hey, there's opportunity out there, right? And like, how do we start to get new people into the pipeline after we've handled our existing customers? So, to your point, right, from an MSP standpoint, a lot of people have decided to start relaxing where they would do work previously they wouldn't, right? Whether it be home stuff or retail stuff or whatever, right? Start going into slightly different vertical, lines of business than they normally would. We all heard that a lot of people had time, right? Because the projects kind of all froze for a minute. And then, some of them started to trickle through. I mean, generally speaking, though, and, closing out the year, right? I mean, the first part of the year was probably all over the place for everyone for obvious reasons. But like, now that we kind of understand what we're dealing with, how do people prepare to position themselves from a sales perspective for 2021, right? Like, can you forecast properly? What adjustments do you have to make? I heard there's a new term instead of EBITDA, it's EBITDAC, to adjust for coronavirus. So like, how do you forecast properly moving forward?
Well, listen, I'm, and I say this humbly, look, it's all I know, right? I always tell my story. I've only really done two things. I was in the military, in the Air Force, a few vests, right? And then I've been in sales. So for me, I was actually able to forecast really well after March, right? March caught us all off guard, but then made those adjustments. Listen, everyone has a different thing. I know a lot of people out there tried holding to their original forecast, and all they did was put their sales teams through a lot of disappointment. They never had a chance. So what I did is working with our CFO, we reforecast right away, literally at the end of February, beginning of March. We couldn't do anything for March because we didn't know, but our forecast was really good for the rest of the year because we made those adjustments. And for sports fans, you mentioned the Eagles, right? They won the other day and I watched that game. Boy, Dallas is having a tough year. But listen, we all know in sports, every coach has a plan. You go and play, and then you make adjustments. If you don't make adjustments, you don't win. And so I think it's the same in sales. We made adjustments, but I think as you think about 2021, first of all, I've been working with my team on doing our 2021 planning for the last 30 to 45 days. So we're getting, we have nice trend since March of where the business has gone. We feel that we have pretty good idea on how it'll continue to trend into 2021. And we've set a forecast, and it does include growth for those others that think you can forecast growth. But listen, George, and we just said it. The world can throw us a curveball at any given time and we'll make adjustments. But right now, what we're doing is setting a plan and making the adjustments to put us in position to achieve the plan. And if something changes, we're not going to be 3 months, 9 months to make an adjustment. We'll be a week or two to make an adjustment.
So for people who maybe are smaller, maybe are newer, right? They haven't got into the ebb and flow of, forecasting, budgeting, planning.
Yeah.
The last 30 to 45 days, you say you've been in this. Give us an idea of what that looks like. What are you planning? What numbers do you look at? How do you guesstimate what you're going to do, where you're going to spend? Like, just give us a little bit of a purview from your angle on what that looks like.
Yeah. So, and it's a little different. I'll share from the vendor side and of course try to equate to the MSP side because I work so closely with you guys. Look, we all did a lot of stuff in person, right? And now we can't do as much in person, and that might last a little bit longer, right? You're seeing what's happening in Europe, and they say Europe's in front of us a few weeks. Whether you agree with it or not, we're probably going to deal with it a little bit longer, and it's going to affect events. So when you budget, and you used to budget and plan off events, that could be live assessments that your field techs are going out, or if it's owner-led, you're going out on site. You're going to do those remote. And how you plan to spend your money, you're probably, a lot of you guys, I read all your stuff. You guys, a lot of you really pivoted and you're putting out more digital marketing and more thought leadership. And I like reading it. And when it's applicable rather than fluffy, man, you want to consume that information. So I would tell you guys, keep doing that, but allow your budget to be aligned to starting off the year non-standard. The events, they're probably not going to be there for any of us. The in-person meetings, it's not going to be the same. You may have some, and I know there's a few events out there, but come on, nothing like what we were all used to. So allow for your budget to do that. Understand, look back at what kind of results you were able to get from some of those virtual digital activities and start to build your plan based on that. By the way, I was on a personal journey the last few years working with MSPs to try to get you guys, and I say you because, right, George, you have your MSP, to take that first leg and do more virtual anyway. You know, from working with you guys, I see a lot of, and I would go on the meetings even, those initial meetings, and, you know, you got to drive an hour across town to go to that virtual meeting to kind of find out they're really not a fit. And, you know, I went on plenty that were fits and referrals and all the other good stuff. But man, now that I see so many of you guys doing a lot of that initial qualification virtually, you can actually do more. And there is a ton of opportunity. And I've continued to hear it from the MSPs that, look, a lot of MSPs drop the ball, man, or whoever, you know, God bless whoever their provider is. And there's a lot of MSPs that got a lot of shift. What are your thoughts on that, George? Have you heard the same thing with MSPs being able to take advantage of some other MSPs maybe dropping the ball?
It absolutely happened. So just to qualify and quantify, right? And there was a lot of community calls early on, right? We all heard a lot of people talking about their particular issue, journey, problem. But the reality is that over communication was super required. And if you didn't, like we all heard about the initial jump, right? Getting people to VPN, remote desktop, whatever. But at the end of the day, a lot of the people surely were not proactive enough in not just the initial communication. They waited for their customer to come to them rather than them flipping the script and going out and having that conversation and continuing to feel that through until everybody was in like a Zen place. So if you miss the frequency of the communication or you miss the proactiveness of that communication, what happened was some of these MSPs used that as a marketing wedge to get in the door and say, have you heard from your IT people? If not, you could be better served, kind of thing, right? And some people are a little bit more aggressive or slimy, whichever, you know, different people take different marketing tactics. But at the end of the day, like, that did resonate for some people. And there were people who started marketing like from day zero, right? Like the second the word coronavirus came out, they started doing their, you know, their Facebook and their LinkedIn and their AdWords and their landing pages and their email. And like, once a lockdown ultimately hit, right, in, you know, March, April, May, they were already out there, right? They had already started that multi-touch campaign to get in front of people. And yeah, I think some people did lose some business that way. I would hope not half of your business, but you probably lost customers that weren't closing down shop. They probably shifted to somebody else. And by the time they made that phone call to you, it was already too late, kind of thing.
But the good news is, and you know, we all lost some customers, and you know, listen, man, I feel for them. You know, if they're leaving us, I've always gotten it. I've always been very empathetic. They're in pain too, you know. And so I think, look, it's trying to be empathetic. It sucks when we lose. Any of us loses one customer or two customers. The number doesn't matter and the size doesn't matter. But I think it is about understanding, you know, going forward and how to reduce some of that exposure. You know, the basics are still there. I mean, look, man, in football, it's still about blocking and tackling. It's not about flying. And so in business, it's the same for us. It's about blocking and tackling. And in the MSP world, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't risk exposure. We know what the rules are. Don't have that one client that is dominating all of your revenue or making such amazing, and you know, look, there's different percentages. I've heard anywhere from 20 to 50%. But listen, we all know if you have that one customer that's dominating a lot of your revenue, and if God forbid you lose them, it's going to hurt. So make sure you're looking at de-risking. Make sure that you understand, look, volume is a good thing. There's safety in numbers. It's what really drives the SaaS business versus enterprise. You know, enterprise back in the day, you close these multi-million-dollar deals and they feel great, you know, but in the SaaS world, it really is like, get those base hits, man. Get those customers, spread that revenue out. Don't overexpose yourself. That way, when you do go for the, to bag the elephant, you've got a lot of partners that'll smooth it out. so you're not exposed, and
Well,
try to take advantage of more virtual. Don't let this slow you down as we go into the new year. Events are going to come back. Listen, do those early discovery calls. Don't feel like your sales team, or if you're owner-led and you're doing those calls, don't always feel you have to run out and drive the hour and a half or 2 hours to do some of that initial discovery. Do it on phone. By the way, that way you could do 4 or 5 in a day rather than maybe 1 or 2.
Well, the other thing that's worth mentioning just from a business planning standpoint is, like, nobody knew the pandemic was coming. Nobody knew Hurricane Sandy was going to hit New York, New Jersey, whatever. But the people who were just in a bad position because of the verticals that they may have keyed in on were the ones that were hardest hit. It almost feels like you need to like zoom back out now and have a multi-vertical approach to leverage your bet, right? Meaning, like, don't all go into hospitality, don't all go into lawyers, don't all go into healthcare, right? Maybe having a little bit of a spread effect is better, right, than just concentrating just on one thing.
Well, yeah, or even I know there's many MSPs, as you know, right, that do specialize in certain areas, and they bring a very specific expertise to that, whether it's in finance. I know a lot of MSPs, that only focus on supporting hedge funds and banks. And listen, I get it. The main thing I would say at the very least is to diversify from a size perspective. But listen, you're right. I know there are a lot in the ecosystem that are somewhat agnostic, do take that broad stroke. And from the ones that I've personally worked with, they're the ones that didn't get hit. I do have a couple friends that did their business focused in hospitality, and it's been a really tough year for them.
Yeah. So, I know we have a shortened scale because I know you were busy today, but, what are the best tips you can give to people that, like, if the salespeople out there in the MSP industry that are short of quota, are struggling to get those prospecting calls through, maybe their leads are light, right? Is there light at the end of the tunnel here? Like, I don't want to discourage people, but I feel like for the guys, MSP sales is difficult as it is, right? Yeah. So I'm just trying to maybe give them some tips, right, to get them through to the end of the year.
Yeah, listen, the best advice, I've been blessed to hire, I don't know, hundreds, thousands, whatever it is now. I'm getting old and I've always been in sales. But look, in the best of years, there's no guarantees ever to my fellow sales brethren, and that might be the MSP owner who's doing the sales too. There's never any guarantees. Again, it comes down to the blocking and tackling. Do you have the right activity? Are you delivering the right message? Are you delivering the timely message? Do you understand your differentiators? And are you doing a good job of communicating them? What have you done right this year? Why did your MSP do so much better than the others in supporting their customers? And I think you want to understand those things and make sure you're communicating them. Make sure you have the right marketing mix. Doing a demand gen this year is not the same as last year. And next year probably won't be the same either. So make sure that you're not beating your head against the wall, trying to do the same things that may have worked for you for 20 years, because this ain't the same 20 years. I did things this year that I hadn't done in 20 years in sales. And I made some adjustments to quotas. You know why? Not to give anyone a break, because it was the right thing to do. I knew there was going to be a change in activity, and you want to keep that morale up. And by the way, I will throw that out to George, the people that are establishing quotas, whether you're watching this on the vendor side or you're on the MSP side with salespeople, or even just setting your forecast for yourself, is listen, make some adjustments, do the right thing. Would you rather have an unreasonable quota where everybody's going to finish at 60%, or would you rather adjust those numbers and have everybody have an opportunity to get to 100%. Give them a layup. The world changed this year. Keep that morale going. It's so important in sales. We're going to get it back anyway. And by the way, guess what? When you lower that quota to a reasonable number, you know what I see, George? People are more motivated in sales, and they'll actually get past it. Rather than if I set a quota way up here, guys, and you're the salesperson down here going, I've got no chance, you never even get close. So you know what? Make some adjustments. You're not going to make them forever. make some adjustments, build that esprit de corps, build that, that morale up, that confidence. We're going to get it back. It's all coming back as it always does.
That's great advice. The last thing you want to do is have an unmotivated sales team, because, man, that's what gets everybody kind of depressed. And you want people to be, pretty pumped, right? Because they think they can get.
You want to get that call from the salesperson when they know they have no chance. Hey, George, hey, my name's Adam, can you buy something? Or do you want to feel like, look, I feel like I have a chance. I still got to work for it. I'm not talking about, hey, if the opportunity is 100, set the quota at 10, right? If the opportunity is at 100, the real opportunity, maybe beforehand it was 140, but if you've identified and you believe that based on all the data and all the numbers and the art and the science that this is now the real number, set that number there. You don't have to set it all the way down here, but bring it here. And then you know what? Your sales team will appreciate it. And they'll say, you know what? I appreciate the adjustment. I'm going to go try to get it. And I'm going to try to get past it. You know what? And that'll always deliver results. I promise you.
Is there any, kind of final thoughts? Is there any particular promotional, angle, or is there any particular, kind of spiff that you can give people to get, to help that demand gen, or is it just different and everybody's, kind of throwing different ideas out there?
No, there's all kinds of different things. Look, back it up to activity. Before we can get to a sale, we know there's activity. If and if the sale is harder to get right now, spiff on the activity, spiff on having a certain amount of meetings or appointments or demos or FDAs, if you're EOS, whatever vernacular is. I do it on outbound calls. I give them an attaboy or an attagirl just for making a certain amount of outbound calls where they can earn some commissions or shifts. Because we all understand in sales, no matter, if you're a one-person sales organization or 1,000, it really doesn't matter, is that we have to drive activity to get to the numbers. It's never changed. And without activity, you have no chance. So don't always look at the final thing. Don't be afraid to try something different. And, for me, to be fair, before even this year, activity has always been a staple on one way that I incent, and I make it actually part of the commission. And I know that some people always go, wait a minute, you're paying them to do their job. And I go, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Because I know what the total cost is going to be for a rep that does a really good job and hits their number. And however I break that up, does it really matter as long as we're hitting those forecasts? And so hitting those goals, the revenue goals, how you get there, you can change up. I would say right now, the main thing is keep everybody active. The world is going to get back to normal. It always has. If it doesn't, we have bigger problems to solve, like how all to become farmers. So honestly, don't waste your time fretting on that. Let's make sure we're making the adjustments now. We're laying the groundwork to have a better experience going forward, because 100% of the time we have rebounded.
No, it's great advice. Well, we're going to end this short here, guys. Sorry for cutting it a little bit halfway today, but Adam's a busy guy. I appreciate Adam, you for coming on board. If anyone is interested in Liongard or interested in talking with Adam, getting some advice, you can find him on LinkedIn, Facebook, liongard.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. He always replies.
Get me on LinkedIn. I respond 100% of the time. I love helping out. It could be anything, simple question, guys, compensation, some of this stuff, and getting a little bit deeper on how to do some of the activity stuff. Love chatting with you guys and meeting new friends. I respond 100% of the time on LinkedIn.
See that? Everybody's reachable. You can find a recorded version of this session online at mspinitiative.com. Please keep on joining us Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. We'll make sure to have Adam back in the near future to figure out other ideas and concepts on how to make things work moving forward. Adam, appreciate your time, buddy.
Thanks, George. Thanks, everybody. See you guys.